Welcome to the Builders of Authority podcast, a show committed to helping you build authority for your brand. In the realm of business and personal branding, authority stands as a cornerstone. Authority isn't built overnight, it's built over time. So join us as we build something remarkable together. And now, here's your host, Adam McChesney.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Builders of Authority podcast. Our title sponsor for the podcast is Go High Level, also known as GHL. GHL is the first ever all-in-one platform that will give you the tools, support, and resources you need to succeed and crush your marketing goals. Personally, I've used this software since 2020. It's been a game changer for my business and our clients. If you are looking to level up your CRM and marketing game, then this is the platform to use. You can find a link for a free and extended 30-day trial with tons of Builders of Authority bonuses in the show notes. So take advantage of this opportunity to adopt the amazing software and grow your business. Today's guest and I have been connected online for a bit, but haven't talked much until today, other than a couple text messages. One of my recent guests and friends, Scott Snofke, did a text introduction between us and recommended that I have him on the show. Heard a lot about him from Scott, seen him online, and excited to get him on this episode. My guest today is Kough. Bobby, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I know we were just chatting a little bit before, but tell the audience a little bit kind of about your story, because it's very unique, and I'm excited to kind of dive in. I didn't want to go too far off before we were recording.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll kind of start with what got me into the industry. As I mentioned, a little bit earlier before, I was in the military. I commissioned as an officer out of West Point. Spent some time just moving around. Spent some time in Korea, Texas. Kind of ended up in Missouri. Once COVID hit, I needed to find something to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was quarantined because of the age of my kid, so I couldn't do anything military related. So there was a whole year where I was building chicken coops, I was building gardens,
Wow.
doing just a bunch of random things that weren't really kind of improving the quality of life for my family. So I started listening to Bigger Pockets, like a lot of people that get into real estate. Decided to just buy a house on a whim. I found something that was in pre-foreclosure on the MLS, bought the house, flipped it, made about 25K. And I was like, dude, this is pretty sweet. Like I can, take 6 months and at the time, being an Army officer, I was doing okay, but I had my wife and a newborn. So, I wanted to figure out something to do that could, improve the life of my family. So I did that, bought a couple rental properties, really started getting into it. I spent a lot of time driving from Texas to Colorado. My brother played at the University of Colorado.
Oh, awesome.
So I spent a lot of time going up there and watching them play football. So it was like an 8-hour drive, and I would just consume as much as I could during those 8-hour drives. I really fell in love with real estate. As I was getting out, I got the opportunity to work with Jimmy Vreeland, who's local here. He hired me on to run his home buying company. And, since then, that was back in January of 21. Since then, him and I have partnered in St. Louis and a couple other markets. We brought my brother in-house because he was kind of running a home buying company off on the side. So now we run a home buying company in St. Louis, Little Rock, and Wichita, Kansas.
Wow. That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
That's a really cool story. Yeah. Did you ever think, looking back, you'd be in real estate?
No. I thought I was going to go work at Honeywell.
Yeah.
And, my plan was Honeywell in Phoenix, probably some project manager, like work my way up the corporate ladder in engineering. But, it's super just grateful for that journey, like landing on real estate. Like it just grabbed a hold of me. Like right when I, started looking into it, I'm like, man, like you can make some real money, and it's fun. I enjoy it. Like, I don't feel like I wake up and, go to the 9-to-5 grind every day, which is really cool.
No, I was in corporate America for 5 years, and it's kind of like I always joke with people as like my worst day as an entrepreneur would have been like my best day, working for somebody else, because you got to figure out all the different aspects. And then like I just got to a point where it's like, okay, there's always a ceiling, even though they'll tell you that there's never a ceiling. Like there's always something that whether it's your time or your freedom or your money. And so it's really cool to see that you kind of, it started from a podcast, right? Where you're like, hey, I'm investing in myself. I just want to learn, right? And then you've been able to take it from here. So what are some of the things that you've kind of learned since you're like, all right, hey, I'm getting into this new space. It hasn't really been that long of a time, and
No.
you've seen some massive growth. So like, what are some lessons and things that you've learned in just going through this process?
Yeah. I mean, a big thing. It all revolves around leadership.
Mm,
Coming out of West Point kind of coins itself as like the premier leadership academy,
Yep.
almost like globally,
yeah.
right? That kind of leadership is very, very different than working with civilians.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
When I was an officer, the rank on my chest means you had to listen to me.
Yeah. Okay.
Getting out and building the team that we've built, which our team is phenomenal. Culture is a big part of what we do. Leading those people, it's been a learning curve. I didn't necessarily have the tools to do that in this sector in real estate, where people could just say, "Hey, I don't like you, I'm out," right?
Yeah.
And then you're left with this massive gap.
Yeah.
Depending on, especially in the early stages,
Yeah.
it's like every individual, like there was a lot of weight on that person.
Yeah.
So I would say leadership, man. It's been interesting to figure out ways to like intrinsically motivate people to kind of build the culture that you want, that works well within the team. That's been the biggest lessons learned have all been with leadership.
Yeah. Well, and I think like, you kind of mentioned like, hey, I just like started with one property, right? And you're like, hey, I realize this is awesome. But I think so often people get confused between being an entrepreneur and actually being like the CEO or a partner of a company.
Yeah.
Right. And so like
Yeah.
the entrepreneur thing is like really cool until you realize like you've almost just created a job for yourself if you don't build a team. Right. So like, I know obviously it happened kind of quick, but like, did you always envision building a team, or you were like, hey, I kind of just want to do this thing, make some good money? And like, how did that expand?
Yeah. So definitely a cowboy operation at first. Even when I joined Jimmy. So what was really cool about this whole process is I got to work for somebody that owned 100 rentals, has built wealth through real estate already.
Mm-hmm.
So I came in, and we were both fairly new to this wholesaling idea and
Okay.
home buying and stuff like that. So coming in and working for Jimmy
Mm-hmm.
was huge, because I've done everything in the company.
Yeah.
Right. Like I started off when I was still in the military cold calling.
Mm.
So I got to, the rejection, like all the different things. I had no sales background,
Yeah.
before that. Um, for the first year or so, like I was the solo guy. Like the joke was kind of like it was Bobby in the Philippines, almost like a rock band,
Yeah, it's got like a nice ring to it.
Yeah. So it was me and a couple VAs. I was running all the appointments, going to people's houses, doing all the evaluations, and then also like I was responsible for the bottom line of the company. We recognized that I did well as an acquisitions rep. Like I closed well, built good relationships with people. But there was a lot of key man risk. If I wasn't doing it,
Yeah.
then nothing was getting done.
Yeah.
So it started with just onesie twosie hires. Obviously, we had to go through the whole hiring learning curve.
Yeah.
Right. So you
That's
have
a fun one.
Yeah. I have some stories. You get some folks that just don't work out, and then you got to reset.
Mhm.
And we've actually, I'd say within the last year and a half, we've gotten to the point where I've completely pulled out of kind of the tactical acquisitions,
Yeah.
doing everything, to more so, leading, facilitating, and driving the business forward, like building equity,
Mhm.
creating the new markets, the bigger stuff that eventually you get to.
Yeah.
So like any startup operation, it's been cowboy hustle to what we just actually hired or promoted within the ranks that second layer of leadership. So like sales managers,
Yeah.
department heads, stuff
Mm.
like that. So we're still pretty new to kind of that growth structure and what that looks like, but it's been fun. It's been
Yeah.
a lot of fun.
That's awesome. So talk to me a little bit about how you all have built like the brand of your company, like the marketing and advertising. I know we were talking about some of that before, but like
Yeah.
how did you build the brand? And then we'll dive into like the strategies, right?
Yeah. So again, a lot of pain
Mm.
went into, because when you start off and you're the cowboy operation, brand is like
Yeah.
non-existent.
It's you.
Yeah. You're not thinking about branding.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you really don't understand like the impact that your actions can have on the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Over time.
Yep.
So It wasn't until early this year where we actually sat down and it was like, okay, we want to have a brand that people can trust, because we're still working through it, but we were operating in a very, very raw, like, sales process. It was some sort of ad, and it was through those companies that produce just generic ads, right? Some of the ads would have Jimmy's face on it, and those usually did a little bit better.
Sure.
But it was some sort of ad to some sort of internal team contact.
Yep.
Like, there was no brand awareness, there was no warm up.
It was just like 0 to 100.
Yeah. We weren't ever able to take somebody from the top of the funnel.
Yeah.
And warm them up to where even if they're not ready today, 6 months from now,
they remember
when they want to sell their house, they're like, oh, I buy STL. That's who I'm going to call. So we actually sat down and we mapped out what we call the seller journey. So and we did it from, which for our team it was a little uncomfortable at the time, but we did it from a really like emotional place.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like somebody's going through whatever they're going through, which a lot of the sellers that we work with, they're going through something. Yeah. Like there's a reason why they're not calling Century 21.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we went and we took about 9-10 hours and we chunked it up, over a course of a couple weeks. And we sat down and we looked at every single step of in our process, kind of what is the like emotional disposition of the seller at that time.
Yep.
Right. Like when is anxiety the highest? Like when are they most uncertain? Because everybody also thinks we're a scam.
Yeah.
at the beginning. Right.
Yeah.
So we took a lot of time mapping that out. And, it improved our sales process. It improved the way that we were messaging to people. Because a lot of the real estate space is quick, cash, easy, right? Like those are kind of like the buzzwords. And we were like, well, we can do all those things, but what's more important to that? And for us, it's solving the individual's problem so that they can move, on with their life and hopefully have a good experience with us. And, we solved their problem.
Yeah.
So we landed on kind of the internal saying that our job at I Buy Houses, so all the markets, is to take a seller from a place of overwhelming anxiety to hopefulness and excitement.
Love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so it sounds like obviously you guys went and reverse engineered what was most important, because I think that's where so often as well, and like what we were talking about before, is like so often when people want to grow their business, what they do is they just go rely on other people that are just going to throw what's worked for everybody else, not truly understand your business, how you guys do things differently than everybody else, and what your ideal client is looking for. So then you get an influx of leads potentially if you're lucky, and then all of a sudden it's like mixed messaging and people think you're this and then you're that. And until you like take full ownership of that, I always tell people, like, you do not have to be experts when it comes to marketing and branding. If you are, that much better.
Yeah.
But you have to be knowing enough to be dangerous, and somebody inside of your team, and if you're working with an agency, has to have that relationship to know what's going on. Otherwise, you're just blindfolded, just throwing darts at a dartboard.
Yeah, and we've experienced that. That's funny you mentioned that. Our website, as an example, we just hired early on. We just hired somebody who's like, hey, build us a real estate website, right?
Yeah.
As we were going through that seller journey exercise, we realized that when somebody fills out a web form, the language was portraying to them that they would get an offer within like minutes.
Oh yeah.
Right? Or like when our rep called them, it would be,
hey, here you go.
Here's the price. So we were wondering, like, why are so many people like, hey, I just want a number. Yeah. And it's like, well, our website says we'll just give you a number.
Yeah.
So some silly stuff that we had to kind of work through, which it's kind of like the V8, like, palm on your forehead. But it's been good. It's been good fixing that. And, now when people come in, because we're all about like expectations.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
With any form of sales, with really any business, where people can become like the most disgruntled in the process is when their expectations and reality, there's a difference.
Yep.
So we're really big on, we're going to set the proper expectations.
Yep.
We're not going to commit to anything that we can't fulfill.
Do, for sure.
And through all the messaging, like I think a lot of people, they don't look at their messaging and understand that is part of setting expectations.
Yeah.
So we had to take some lumps for that, but it's been good getting that fixed. And we've seen the improvement. We show up to closings and talk to sellers after the fact and get reviews, and everybody just seems just so much, happier with the way that we operate now.
Yeah. That's awesome. So talk to us about like the market expansion. So you guys started here in St. Louis and then moved to Little Rock, Wichita. Like, what has that whole process been like?
Yeah. So we kind of just, we call it our boat days. So Jimmy has a wakeboarding boat, and we go out and we'll go wake surfing, and I think we were listening. We were real big on a Alex Hormozy kick, where we were listening to a lot of his content.
A lot of us.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's great stuff.
Oh yeah.
It's phenomenal. And there was something in there that was like, I got from that podcast, like, why can't we take this and move it elsewhere? I think we were starting to limit ourselves in St. Louis.
Yeah.
Right. We were trying to build this fortress in St. Louis, and it was like, okay, the marginal dollar. It's like if we're going to build this fortress, we're going to have to spend $50,000-$60,000 more a month in marketing, where we could take half of that and have a better return.
Yeah.
So we landed on the idea. My brother was actually operating in Little Rock with one of his buddies.
Okay.
He was also in Columbia, Missouri.
Oh, nice.
So he came. He was in the life insurance industry, and he was like, "Hey, I'm tired of this. I want to do what you do. Can you teach me?" And I was like, "Yes, but you can't compete with me." I was like, that was my only rule. I was like, just don't compete in St. Louis with me. And he was like, okay. So he started a home buying company in Columbia, Restoration Home Buyers. He branched out into Little Rock because he had a buddy there. So his buddy was running boots on the ground. He was doing the phone sales. He started having some pretty good success, and I just had a conversation with Jimmy and Jared. I was like, hey, what does it look like if we just merge? I was like, Jared, you're going to get a lot of the operational support from St. Louis, which, we call the hub now, because it's kind of like a hub and spoke model.
Yeah.
So that was kind of our first test run. Like, Jared was our guinea pig in that.
Yeah.
And man, it's phenomenal. Like, this month actually is the first month that Little Rock's going to beat St. Louis.
Wow.
In revenue.
And how long has that one been rolling?
About 8 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So what we've realized is, we've taken the St. Louis operations, and operations means like, our sales managers, our lead management, so inside sales agents. We've taken that, and really you just need a couple assets locally in the market. So once you find those assets, title company, somebody that can run boots on the ground appointments, a runner for evaluations and pictures, we piece that together. We're doing the same thing in Wichita. We're 3 months in, and the market's already profitable. So we've realized that, if we can build the operational strategy in St. Louis, like, there's really no limitation. And honestly, like, we don't want to build a bunch of castles, because when you build that castle, like, all there is like, from a market share standpoint, all you have to do is lose.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I think, and obviously, like, your brother was in Little Rock and in Columbia, Missouri, so I'm sure that had something to do with it. But I talk with investors a lot. I talk with roofing companies. I talk with contractors that are like, man, I want to go expand. I want to go to these markets. Well, usually what they're doing is they're not taking a look at Little Rock and Wichita. They're saying, I want to go to Chicago. I want to go to Dallas. And that's where so many people go wrong, is they want to be the castle in those markets. And it's like, and this is where I struggled and with my marketing agency and some of the partners that I was with, is they're like, man, Inc. 5,000, hundreds and hundreds of clients, millions and millions of dollars revenue. And even when I was running my own agency before, it's like, man, I almost made more money, profitability in my business when I did 750,000 in sales than I did 1.75 million.
Yeah.
So why am I doing it? Am I doing it for the social aspect? Am I doing it for the perception of other people? And I think so many people get lost in that, lose a bunch of money, and then they never recover from it.
Yeah, it's vanity metrics.
Yeah.
Right? Like revenue and customers.
Yeah.
And it's like, what's the actual end state of what you're trying to do? Is it to better the lives of you and your teammates, or is it to be, nationally recognized? and now we hope to get to that point, but we're gonna do it
the right way
through the strategy of tertiary markets.
Yeah.
I mean, you made a great point. Like, we're not going to Phoenix.
Yeah.
Right? Like, those guys spend $1 million in marketing a month.
Yeah,
like,
We don't can't do that.
We don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're gonna closely monitor. Obviously, we're gonna push the needle of that to that point of like diminishing returns.
Yeah.
And then if St. Louis ever gets to the point of where it's like, hey, let's say, it caps out at 5 million, top line.
Yeah.
And let's say, hey, we can maybe get to 7, 8, 9 million, but that ROAS starts to decrease to like a 2-to-1.
Yeah.
It's like, no, we're going to take that money and
go elsewhere.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because
awesome.
what we're seeing too is when we go into a new market, like the ROAS is like 8-to-1, 10-to-1.
It's fun.
Yeah. So I'm like, all right, well, we'll build a bunch of outposts.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And so when you guys are going, you're basically taking the model you've already proven here, the operations, the back end support, and then you're just going and finding some of these other opportunities and markets.
Yeah. Ideally, we want to. I think in the future we're kind of looking at a couple different options because what we're gonna have to get to is expanding to more than one market per year, right? So like right now we're kind of slow rolling.
Yeah.
I think as the team grows and we get some quality people, we are gonna just have to raise the ships because a lot of these guys coming in, they're cool with being an acquisitions rep for 2 years, 3 years, but they want more. Like they want to be market operators.
Yeah.
Like they want some equity in a market or stuff like that. So and we love that. Like we love having those kind of people join the team.
Yeah.
So we're looking at it, it's like, do we roll out like a partnership model where we find somebody that maybe has an okay business and they're just not operating at full capacity.
Yep.
Maybe we partner with those people. Maybe we just, elevate people within the team. So we're still trying to figure out what that bigger strategy looks like. But the first 2 go arounds, I mean, it's been a lot of fun, bringing on new people. We have to hire a lot now.
Yeah.
I think we have to hire 12 plus people in the next 6 months.
Wow.
But it's fun. It's part of that growth process.
Yeah. How's the market playing into everything with everything that's going on?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's been good. This year's been good. This year's been really, really good. I know last year, kind of when the interest rates, there was like a weird period. We've kind of recognized that regardless of the type of market, whether it's up or down, the only time that we really tighten up marketing wise is the in between phases where maybe prices have dropped a little bit, but the seller still thinks that the prices from last summer are the numbers that they're going to get, right?
Yeah.
We saw a lot of that when prices dipped from COVID, and they didn't dip a crazy amount. It's just people started becoming a little bit more realistic. So there's usually like a quarter or 2 lag to where people realize, okay, it's not the summer of COVID where you're selling a $250,000 house for $350.
Yeah.
So strategy wise, I mean, right now with the election, obviously TV. The states that we're in, like the primary race is kind of, historically those states are just boom, right when it's like right when they go on the map, they go a specific color. We're seeing a lot of kind of the tighter state races impact TV. Our theory is people are just turning it off.
Yeah.
Right. They just don't, because so we've, in terms of lead gen from September to October, we're down like about 50%.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, and it's impacting direct mail too, right? It's their priority is the ballots and all that stuff. So we have some mail drops that are kind of sitting a little longer than we'd like.
Yeah.
So I think it's a temporary slowdown, but the good news is a lot of what we do, it's like we're realizing our efforts from 2 months ago.
Yeah.
Right. So it's maybe in January, February we'll feel the impact of October.
Yeah.
But there's ways that we can kind of hustle around that.
Yeah. Well, I always tell people is like when you have hey, I do this and you get immediate stuff back, that's great. But it's usually not the big ROAS stuff.
Right.
The big ROAS stuff is like 90 days plus where it's like, okay, wow, now we're to the first page of Google, or now we got this brand already out there. We got this new referral partner and all these different things. It starts to really flush everything out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we're, and you're exactly right. Like 78 days is like our to the T cash conversion cycle.
Yeah.
Which you can't really do a whole lot with that. It's like it's 90 days.
Yeah.
You know, so that's kind of how we're operating, and we're changing the way that we're forecasting. We're trying to build the subsequent months a little bit more.
Yep.
As we go. So, this time's always a little slower. We're gonna hit December. You got Christmas. January is historically the worst month of the year.
Yep.
So we're trying to figure out a way to combat that a little bit.
Yeah. Love it. Well, man, this has been an awesome episode. Any last pieces of advice that you would share with someone that, let's take real estate out of it, just as like your entrepreneurial and brand building journey over the last couple of years of, hey, I don't know what I'm doing, to, man, I'm building this thing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing is number one, don't give up. Right. I see a lot of even my buddies that will get into something and maybe they want to get into wholesaling and 6 months goes by, they don't have a whole lot of success. They just throw in the towel and
it doesn't work.
Yeah. It's like, well, dude, yeah. If you take everything in life in 6-month increments, like you're going to fail a lot. So I'd say the biggest thing is don't give up, find a community because that's been huge. So we're part of the Collective Genius community and man, 80% of what we learn, we implement and it works.
Yeah.
Right. So